Now, continuing on our top story for more, let's bring in Peter Jones, who is the Managing Director and Founder of Prological Consulting. Lovely to have your company, Peter. Thank you for joining us on this.
Oh, good morning, Holly, and thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, it's lovely to get your insight on this story today, Peter. It's big news for us. You've worked in the disciplines of supply chain for decades. EU and Australia launched negotiations for a free trade agreement back in 2018. Just tell us a little bit why FTAs are so vital.
Well, look, from an Australian perspective particularly, we're a long way from the rest of the world, and we've sort of bought into the rhetoric that for Australia to be exporting is a difficult task outside of our agricultural and primary industry sectors. At a time when COVID has shown Australia very much that maybe we would do a little bit better if we were more self-sufficient from a manufacturing perspective. The government has bought into that with lots of support and a lot of discussion and encouragement for Australians businesses to be onshoring more manufacturing. And then to see that from an Australian perspective, the EU would be a key market for things that we could manufacture in Australia, which generally are going to be higher end, a little bit more expensive, sophisticated. And so the EU is a key market. And so at the very time, the government's encouraging businesses to be considering onshoring manufacturing, we've actually gone and made it more difficult with one of the key target markets that we should be approaching.
Yeah, it's a critical time for both parties, isn't it, at the moment? Well, we know the EU is Australia's second largest trading partner and second largest source of foreign investment as well. Why is that negotiation phase so important?
Look, to both kickstart Australia's opportunities, with Brexit having occurred as well, it all opens up new opportunity for Australia. And so at the very time one door opened that we've been chasing for a long, long time, we've gone and, as it were, we've pooed in our own nest. And we've actually made this transition from what have been two very good rounds of negotiation in rounds 10 and 11, and leading into round 12 and almost getting to a conclusion, we've gone and created this great difficulty for ourselves. And it's quite problematic. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, this will all sort itself out. There will, however, I think, be a legacy cost to Australia. From a French perspective, this is a great position for them to be, posturing of having been damaged and injured. And without question, if I were them, I would be now leveraging this going into the conclusion of those free trade agreements. And Australia, unfortunately, will be a little worse off because of the compromises we will now need to make due to the relational damage we've caused with a more than century-long close ally and partner.
Yeah, and also, Peter, we've just got breaking news coming into the newsroom now as well. We know Australia and India are actually set to suspend their free trade agreement from 2022. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, again, these things are just critical for our nation. Whilst we might be I think we're the 12th or 13th biggest economy in the world, the gap between the top and us is huge. And for Australia's own prosperity, we need these agreements in place to be able to foster Australian industry and manufacturing, both in terms of being able to competitively procure that which these other nations produce, and as well as opening up those doors for our businesses to be able to export in a very competitive global environment. And these FTAs are central for our own interests and for the prosperity of our nation going forward. And it's just, to find the position that we are in now in both of those circumstances, it just works against what is in the nation's best interest in the medium and long term.
Now, going back to the EU, suspension, officials in Brussels have acknowledged that the AUKUS announcement had prompted a reflection, if you like, on the talks. Should Australia be concerned? Will things change in the FTA?
Oh, look, ultimately the free trade agreement is with the EU, so it's not a bilateral agreement with France per se, albeit, the French are now, I think as one commentator said in the Fin Review this morning, a very powerful voice within the collective of the EU. So in dealing with that issue now, we will have to pay something I don't think ultimately this will derail the whole negotiations. It will slow them down, and there will be a compromise cost we will need to pay somewhere along the line, and that is unfortunate. The fact that it's only been delayed by a month this morning in this morning's announcement, that suggests that this is more about posturing than it is ultimately about a total breakdown and failure in these negotiations. The other side, though, is, France is stonewalling Australian government officials as well as ministers at several levels at the moment. So they're certainly showing the world that they're somewhat hurt and disappointed in what's occurred.
Peter, I mean, we're in the middle of the worst shipping crisis our national and global supply chain have ever seen before, potentially, under immense pressure at the moment. You touched on it a little bit before, but what are the consequences of these kind of suspensions, even if it is for a month's time? And I guess, how is the industry coping at the moment?
Look, so I'll answer the second question first. How's industry coping at the moment? Look, it is really difficult. And I'm not sure we've seen the worst of it yet. Global shipping prices for most of the corridors Australia trades on have gone up 3- and 4-fold. The shipping lines have withdrawn a lot of capacity out of the networks, and they've had to do that to maintain some level of profitability. So that has created globally a demand curve that way outstrips supply at the minute. Further to that, the empty shipping containers are out of kilter around the world. So the whole global shipping industry and container movement sort of operates a little bit like an orchestra. And if you pull one piece out of it, it no longer is the same as what it used to be. And so now we have enormous amounts of manufacturing happening in China, but we've got a ports in Australia chock-a-block full of empty containers without enough ships coming to Australia to get those containers back to China. So China can't export as much as they would like to be around the world, because the empty containers are all in the wrong places, but there's not enough ships around to move the empty containers back to where they need to be. And I think, whilst, probably Q1, Q2 will probably reach the peak of the disruption, it will take 2 or 3 years for all of this to realign and settle back down. And the advice we're giving to our clients who are on the back end of this is, don't go looking over the fence for a better arrangement. You are far better to be working within the relationships you have with your existing partners and resolve your problems within that context, because wherever you look at the moment, they've got the same issues.
Peter Jones, it's great to get your insight on this important topic. There's no doubt that we'll catch up with you over the coming weeks and months in regards to this evolving story. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Holly, and you have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Take care.